Frank Klose, Phillies Mailbag. Phillies down the stretch they come. September baseball. Phillies are the playoffs that they start now. Little do we know, like they are every year, it's just when they start falling apart because they did this weekend. As soon as the calendar hit September, Frank, Phillies look like they went back to the old Phils.
Well, it's still kind of May if you go by this season. So hopefully that means that the Phillies will be hanging in until the very, very end.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they got a rough stretch of games, as you know, coming up. Give us a little insight. Give us to the listeners a little detail on the what is the mountain to climb ahead this month?
Well, it's all the doubleheaders. So the Phillies have to make up the games that they didn't play when the Marlins had their COVID outbreak, and that includes some games against the Marlins. So the Phillies are going to play a 7-game series against the Marlins this weekend, and that is something I don't think anybody could ever say in the history of baseball that they played a 7-game series, other than like a playoff series, right? So I think looking at what the Phillies have, that's the only thing. Can they endure these doubleheaders? They're playing one today against the Red Sox, and hopefully they can do well during that. But after tomorrow's off day, like it's on, and then they have 2 doubleheaders against the Marlins in this one series alone. One against the Blue Jays, they're cramming in, and then they have one against the Nationals. So really, in terms of the competition they're playing, the Blue Jays, 4 against the Blue Jays seem to be the toughest, and 3 against the Rays. But the in-division games, the Phillies have kind of showed that they can handle up to this point. I mean, the small sample size against the Marlins, of course, that opening weekend, but but how they do against the Marlins with all these games jammed into the weekend, I think that's going to be very, very telling, and how they do against the AL East.
Yeah, no question about it. They got a long road ahead here, as you mentioned. Now, the one thing is they got the 7-game series with the Marlins coming up, and you could say, that's unprecedented. But the Marlins also have to play those games as well. So you can look at it as a way to separate yourself because the Marlins are just a game and a half behind you. So this could be a huge separator on who finishes in second place in the East.
It could. And then if usually when you play doubleheaders, you usually want to get away with a split. I mean, so out of these 7 games, if you can go 4-3 even, I mean, that's helpful. But ideally, you want to go at least 5-2 if the Phillies can pull that off somehow.
Let's dive into the mailbag. Steve wants to know if Roman Quinn will ever play more than 60% or whatever of a season, or should we try and trade him while he's still controllable for an extended time since there's still Adam Hazley on the table? And I just want to say, I do think it's weird that Adam Hazley will never get an opportunity against lefties. Like in last game, they put Garlick out in right field and they had Bryce in center. At what point should he just at least get an opportunity?
Doing that again today, aren't they?
At what point can you at least get an opportunity to let him face a lefty?
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I think the Phillies paid dearly for that defensive matchup when Kyle Garlick misplayed a ball in right field.
You didn't like that
Bryce
footwork?
Harper probably would have got. No, I don't like that footwork, and that was the kind of run that just sort of made the difference in and letting things sort of seem to get out of hand there, right? So that was an important play that should have been made. And when you talk about pitching and defense winning games, certainly that defense would have helped. But yeah, so Adam Hazley aside, in terms of Roman Quinn, he's still controllable, as the question kind of says. And when he is healthy, he provides tremendous value. Now, the Phillies do have Adam Hazley, who is a smooth defender. He might not be as good as Quinn when Quinn is at his best. Doesn't have Quinn's speed, but he's a nice player. But when you start to think about like taking Roman Quinn off your roster, all the other teams out there see the same thing that you're seeing, Steve, and that's he's getting hurt a lot. Now, this latest thing was a concussion. Hopefully it's just 7 days, and after he goes through the protocol, we haven't actually heard that it was a concussion of any particular severity just yet. So the thing with Roman Quinn, they still are all different injuries that are all not connected to one another. But if you're a team that would look to acquire him, you got to wonder that he's going to be healthy too. So I think there's more value in just keeping him, riding him when he's good, because let's face it, there were a couple games this season that he really won on his own. He made that wonderful play in center field, and there were times his speed just made the difference in a ball game. And so you really want to just use him as much as you can. And luckily, the Phillies have Adam Hazley, but they have somebody who can play center field. So if I'm the Phillies, I just try to make sure I don't overuse him and really look for the situations to maximize his value, and use Adam Hazley as well. Yes, I would use Adam Hazley against some lefties before the season's up.
Frank, let's stay with the outfield. Matt wants to know, everybody wants to know, what's the outfield depth? I mean, they're using Bryce Harper in center field again. It's only the second time he's played center field for the Phillies. Yesterday was the first. Any updates on Kingery when he might be back? Because obviously the outfield depth is a big issue right now.
You know, when Scott Kingery went on the injured list, we knew he had some of those nagging things, such as his shoulder. And when the Phillies put him on the IL, it almost seemed like, okay, well, Dave Bruce is coming back. We're going to have enough bench players. You don't want to get to the point where you're cutting a player that could be on your roster if you don't have to, or optioning someone to the minor league. So I think they took that injured list in just to get him refreshed. But what ends up happening is we see they lose two more outfielders in the process before the 10 days in the IL are back. So Kingery, I would not be shocked if you see him as early as Thursday. That is the day he is eligible to come off the injured list. We haven't heard a particular update, but it's, I know he's hitting, so that's always a good sign. So you might see him activated then. Jay Bruce, that injury was a nagging left quad. I don't think that's going to go away this season. So I think you're in a situation now where you have to manage it best you can. So maybe Bruce, depending on how severe it is this time, he can heal up a little bit, and then maybe try to be a designated hitter some way. I mean, I think that's part of the problem is, you've been trying to let Andrew McCutchen sort of get his legs back under him some, and so he's been DHing a good amount. But when that's happened, then you miss out on Jay Bruce being the DH, and if he's got a sore quad, he needs to rest it. So hopefully that even though we don't know the extent of that, hopefully that's over with soon. And then Kyle Garlick is a backup for the time being, and hopefully Roman Quinn is just a quick 7 days. The injured for concussion protocol, you can have as few as 7 days. So maybe in a week's time, Roman Quinn will be back. But certainly it hurts, and certainly you don't want to put Bryce Harper in center field and then Kyle Garlick in right, because I think you've weakened two positions if you do that. Now, I will say this about Kyle Garlick. He's been known, at least in the past, to hit some home runs against lefty pitching, so maybe that's why he is in there. They're making sure they're playing him instead of Hazley today. It might be more that, but we'll see if that pays off. But hopefully in the next week or so, this will all kind of smooth itself out, and the Phillies will at least have a full bench.
Sheldon asks, what is the playoff chances now that the Phillies split with the Mets over the weekend?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of what we were saying. If the Phillies can take care of the Marlins, I think that's going to make all the difference. Now, this has been really kind of underexplained, I think, in my opinion, and I find myself tripping over it too. But, when we were going into the season, there was talk about having 8 playoff teams, and it sounded like there would be 5 wild card teams. And so when they actually implemented it after the fact and after the season got going and we didn't have enough time to pay attention to it, the actual rule is first and second place make the playoffs. So the Phillies are in the driver's seat to maintain that second place in the National League East. And a lot of that will have to do with how they do against the Marlins. And, I mentioned the Phillies do have some tough games coming up against the Blue Jays and the Rays. The Marlins also, they're going to face the New York Yankees. So it's not like it's just the Phillies that is going to have those interleague opponents too. So, and meanwhile, the Braves lost another starting pitcher. I just have to throw in there. Max Fried hit the injured list with back spasm. So the Braves are struggling along in terms of their starting pitching. That could catch up to them at some point. Cole Hamels may actually make an appearance for the Braves, but he hasn't pitched all season, so you don't know exactly what you're going to get. So the Braves are probably in a good spot. I mean, they don't have the same type of tough opponents that the Phillies will the rest of the way, but they're struggling to stay healthy. So it's very much open for the whole National League East, but I think if the Phillies take care of business against the Marlins, then they can maybe have some room in that second place column. So even if they do run up against a rough patch against one of the tougher teams, they might be able to endure that a little bit better.
We will end on this. Are you excited for Vince Velasquez versus Nick Pivetta in Game 2 today?
If Zach Eflin can give you 6 or 7 innings, ideally 7, and you have to go to the bullpen, I would feel better about a Vince Velasquez start. But I think that's what's going to have to be the case. He's going to have to set a tone today. In fact, I don't know how much time I have left, but I actually sketched out starting pitching the rest of the season. Velasquez is going to have to start in 5 days again in one of those doubleheaders. And then the 14th of September, the Phillies need a 7th starter. No one knows who that is at this point. And September 22nd, they're going to need a 7th starter. So I think that's going to be that's what I'd be more worried about if I'm the Phillies. So Velasquez looks like he's going to make at least 3 starts the rest of the way. But then you have 2 starts where you don't know who's going to make them. They're probably bullpen games. There's no stretched out arm that's ready to come in and start some games for the Phillies. So I would be worried about those.
All right, Frank Klose has the Phillies mailbag, and, of course, Phillies in action. It seemingly will be every day the rest of the way. They got double headers galore, so if you want to play 2, this is for you. The Sports Bash will have you covered. Frank Klose, at Frank Klose with a K, and, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, guys.